Good morning, it's Dee here. Today's date is the 3rd of December and the time is coming up to 8 o'clock. If it's not already, I haven't quite checked the time. So welcome to a very wintry day, very dark as we're coming towards the shortest day of the year. So even got the lights on still here in my house. We're working at home today, so going to be one with all the lights and all the heating on, I think. Astrology of this week. Well, the biggie, the one that everybody's been talking about, is the change of Jupiter sign. So yesterday, the 2nd of December, Jupiter changed its sign from Sagittarius into Capricorn. And there's been a lot of talk around this, quite negative talk. It hasn't got the best reputation in the world. Jupiter here is in its fall. But that's not to say it doesn't have its good elements, and we will talk about both the good and the bad of Jupiter in Capricorn. So first of all, let's reflect back on to the year of Sagittarius. So Sagittarius was all about bringing the vision and going off and having adventures and trying things that are new and wanting to be daring and be bold and to expand, and Jupiter in its own sign, so it's all about the expansion, the trying, the stretching the boundaries as far as you can go, looking at those new things, trying those new things, bringing light and joy. I mean, Sagittarius is very much about joy and happiness, and it brings us faith and good feelings. So it is a very, very positive influence, not just for ourselves personally, but around the world as well. So, seeds of hope, even in these times of Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn, again, which we'll come on to, that there are glimmers of hope in and amongst all this kind of very fundamental shifts in our behaviour and our view of the world. So depending on obviously what house Sagittarius was in for you will depend upon where the influences are. And I think at the end of a transit is a good time to then go back and have a look at the things that have happened over the year. Were they positive? Were they negative? What kind of things did they bring? For myself, I've got a lot of mutable planets, so Jupiter in Sag isn't exactly the best for me because it squares a lot of my and opposes a lot of my planets. So even though it is a great benefic, it doesn't often bring the best for me, because obviously, say, it's hitting all my other planets in harsh aspect. Although right at the beginning of Jupiter in Sag, at the beginning of the year, was when I got my new job, and I have got my midhaven in Sagittarius, 3 degrees. So in that respect, it did bring me a good thing, and I elected as well for my start date to be a beneficial one, so that I could get the most out of this particular aspect and the position that I was going into. So, and it is a Sagittarian position. It's teaching, which is, say, Sagittarian occupation. Other Sagittarius can say philosophy, adventuring, any kind of religious occupation, also magistrates, judges, because Sagittarius likes to be very judgy, but also just Capricorn. So, so those kind of professions are all associated with Sagittarius. So if you do have midhaven near Sagittarius, like myself, if you want to find out if you've got midhaven near Sagittarius, go to our good friends at Astro.com, put in your birth details, and it will come up for you there. And if you are not quite clued into the symbolism, it's the one that says MC. So Meridium Coli is the Latin version of your midhaven, and that is where you will find the keys to your likely professions, or where you will be successful in the outside world. So so going back, go back through, say, this year, look at what's happened. Have there been opportunities there that haven't been there before? Has it been in the form of people? Has it been in the form of events? What positive influences have you had this year that have opened up your horizons in new ways? So those are all the things that Jupiter rules. So it's a good way of saying, right, when I go back there again, because Jupiter cycles are every 12 years, you can then see what the patterns are if you're keeping a track of them. So as we move into Jupiter in Capricorn, one of the ways you can kind of preempt what's likely to happen is going back to 12 years ago, which will be 2008, and what was happening for you at that time. Was it better at the beginning of the year? Was it better at the end, in the middle? Did you have a bad year? Was it a good year overall? Did you see things start that then took root? And because one of the things about Jupiter in Capricorn is you won't see things happening quickly. They happen over time, but they are long living. So even if you think that what you're starting now might not have legs and be able to continue, the chances are that it will if it's under the influence of Jupiter in Capricorn, because Capricorn rules longevity. And so things might start slowly, but they do build over time, and if you stick with them, then that's the thing about anything that's Saturn ruled, that you have to stick with it to be able to get the benefit of it. You might see success coming your way, and that's one of the big positives about Jupiter in Capricorn, is that if you are prepared to put in the hard work and the effort, you will see eventual reward. But this is a long-term reward. This isn't fast fixes. In a world of fast fixes, that suits Jupiter in Sag, that wants everything yesterday, we're not very keen on investing in the longer term. And that's what Jupiter in Capricorn is actually asking us to do. It's saying cake tomorrow. It's not saying cake today. So, you will have to get used to the idea that not everything comes as quickly as you may like it to. So if you are the kind of person who is impatient, maybe a lot of Aries going on, a lot of Mars action going on, you might get a bit exasperated with the slow moving Capricorn pace. But stick with it, because those quick fixes are all very well, but they tend to fizz and bang and are gone. So if you want something that's going to be build up and last for a long time, then Jupiter in Capricorn is your person for doing that. And there are a lot of successful people out in the world with Jupiter in Capricorn. So it's not all bad. Like I said, there's been a lot of doom and gloom said about this particular placement, but there are good sides to it as well. And I think the big one that a lot of people are talking about is the world going into recession. Because obviously Jupiter in Capricorn financially contracts. So if economies have been pushing too far into the realms of Jupiter in Sag and spending and overstretching, and if you look back to the madness of the banking crisis of 2008, when people were almost using imaginary money to invest in other things, this idea of money having the potential but not actually being real, and people gambling on these kind of futures possibilities, which was futures possibilities is all very Jupiter in Sagittarius. And of course that world came crashing down in 2008, and we ended up in a position of having to bail out those banks and those people who'd pushed those barriers too far. And the thing is, one wonders if that does happen again, if they will finally get their comeuppance this time. And you know, that we will finally learn our lesson and put some brakes onto these people who play with our futures and play with people's livelihoods and the whole economies of countries. You know, the idea that they can get away scot-free because somehow they are above the law, say very much to me does smack of Jupiter in Sagittarius. It's that kind of like, oh, you know, I can just cast things off and don't have to suffer any consequences and go on to the next thing. And those lessons obviously haven't been learned because we're back in the same position again. And, you know, could we look back and regret our decisions not to punish those people at that particular time? Yeah, the likelihood is that we will do. And one of the few countries that did punish their financial people was Iceland, and they were the quickest to come out of recession, and they've not gone back in again since then. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. And, you know, particularly in America, they've been forecasting a crash for some time. And the fact that Trump's popularity has been riding high because the economy has been good and they haven't felt the effects of some of his policies, you know, particularly to do with the tariffs and the trade, because the government have been supporting the farmers to and production to some extent. But one wonders if this will be the year when it comes crashing down, and if this could change what the elections of 2020 will look like. So we shall see on that one whether or not it does come to pass, and if it does come to pass, whether or not it will have a big effect on how things are done differently, rather than more of the same, which is what happened in 2008. So in terms of big picture, the economy is slowing down, contracting. It is not a time to spend at all. If you are taking any lessons from this particular aspect, do not overstretch yourself during a Jupiter in Capricorn year, because that will come back to bite you. This year is about containment, it is about investing wisely, it is about saving, it is about being frugal, it is not being excessive, it is investing and saving and contracting. Those are the main things that you've got to remember for this next 12 months. So if you're thinking about yourself in those kind of terms, say, have you overstretched yourself recently? Have you used material wealth and possessions to plug up other areas in your life? And is it now the time to decide about what to keep and what to throw away, and what to invest in and what to cast off in terms of bad habits and things like that? And I think one of the things that you might see this year is an increase in the idea of recycling things, particularly things like clothes, using fabrics again, people buying second-hand and used and vintage and things like that. It will also be about maximising the use of resources, so finding ways in which we can be more sustainable in what we do, but also generally about our spending. It's like, are we spending money for the sake of spending money? You know, do we need all these things? Do we need all these, you know, holidays and nights out and going out for meals and takeaways and things like that? Or is there a better way to spend our money, or even just save our money? So look at ways in which you can cut back on unnecessary items, go through your home and, you know, maybe sell off some of the things that you don't need anymore. Strip back. Back to this Marie Kondo idea again that we talked about in relation to the nodes, which will be very much coming into play. The South Node are very much coming into play later this month with Jupiter. And it's about casting off things that no longer work for us. So this idea of, change and expansion through contraction. That is a sort of phrase I think I'll end up using a lot this year. So cutting back on certain things in order to develop other things within your life. And I think particularly as Capricorn is associated with things like, status and high quality items and, spending for the sake of having something for a long time rather than, say, the frivolousness of the Jupiter in Sagittarius. That is the idea going forward, that you maybe have a few things that are of value to you, and what you value might not necessarily have a monetary value. It might have a value just for you as a person, or it could have a value over time. So it's about giving yourself personally and your environment the once over, and deciding upon what you would like to keep and what you would like to throw away. And think of it also in terms of the resources that you use in the world. It could be about investing in something like an electric car. It could be making sure that you recycle more, that you are buying from ethical organisations that don't use too much packaging. I think you will probably see supermarkets doing more in that respect, and people voting with their feet, in terms of, well, which places are actually making an effort to be more sustainable. And when you have stories about whales with 1/2 ton of plastic inside of their bodies, that were found off Scotland, this really brings home this idea that, we have to be more responsible in how we use our resources. In terms of what it will mean in terms of governments, I don't want to call that one as yet, because I'm too biased in one particular direction on that. But whoever becomes the incumbent in America and in this country, we've got our election first in America next year, will preside over a period of contraction rather than expansion, of deciding, say, what to keep and what to throw away in terms of what we want as a society, where are our priorities, what we want for ourselves going forward, and investing in our future. So that's the Jupiter piece. I think I've covered all the words I wrote down. I'm just going to double check. So I wrote down quite a lot of words in terms of Jupiter. Yeah, I mean, I've just put down here things like, this isn't about quick wins, change is slow. To think about what you want to keep, what do you want to throw away. It's quality versus quantity. And so taking that vision that you began last year and starting to make some of it reality. And it isn't necessarily about throwing away all the things from last year in terms of the ideas. It's about building upon them and deciding which ones will have wings and will fly. But if you want to, say, check out where things are happening for yourselves, go over to astro.com, get your birth data in there. If you have printers off your chart, have a look what house is going to be affected by Jupiter this year. And it will be a house that's already got a lot of action going on in it, because obviously we've got Saturn and Pluto in there as well. Saturn we've had in there since 2017. Pluto we've had since 2008. We've also got the South Node in there as well. So it's not as if we're going to have a whole new lot of things to contend with. This is all stuff that's been going along maybe in the background for some people, maybe it's in the foreground for other people, particularly if you have got excuse me, a lot of cardinals, so Aries and Cancer and Capricorn and Libra, particularly around the middle of those signs. There's been a lot of action going on already. I mean, I've got friends who have, gone through major changes, who got cardinal planets and are still sort of wrestling with some of those things going forward. So, this is about Jupiter coming along and because Jupiter, irrespective of the sign, is still a benefic. He still brings positivity. So it might not be in the grand fashion of, say, Jupiter in Sagittarius, but it will bring benefits. So, you know, if you have been struggling under the weight of Saturn and Pluto over these last few years, this could be the turning point, whereby, you know, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, you can see a way forward and how things are going to be. It will help those two planets along to look at, say, the positives in the changes that have been made. So, you know, say when I think about Capricorn, I think of very much sort of the old world order, that it's to do with patriarchy, it's to do with authority and the way we do things, and, you know, that's how we've always done things around here, kind of thing. And those things are going to change, and they are shifting slowly but surely. And we can see, I'm sure, again, you can only see these things when you look backwards and see how far that we have come in a lot of these areas. You know, particularly when we look at, some of the things to do with how we become sustainable. It might not be going as quick as we would like, but we are slowly making progress. Look at the things like what's happened with the Me Too movement and the changes to how we are challenging the patriarchy and authority. I think the fact that today and yesterday even there was the Panorama programme about Jeffrey Epstein's girls and the relationship between Prince Andrew and those underage girls, and that coming out, because obviously Prince Andrew very much a representative of authority and the monarchy, and something that has been long established and traditional, and suddenly being challenged. You know, I could never have imagined, you know, even 10, 15 years ago, somebody coming along and challenging the monarchy and the expectations of behaviour, and the fact that they could do something like that, but also be called out for doing something like that. So that will be an interesting one to follow. Prince Andrew is Sun Pisces, so he, you know, in terms of transits, you've got Neptune in Pisces there, and Neptune in Pisces is being challenged in these next few weeks. I mean, this week I think we have got, if I look at my notes, we have got the Sun square Neptune on the 8th, which is next Sunday. So that is challenging the illusion and delusion as well. And that could see as well, you know, because the Sun is Sagittarius, could say rules courts, rules magistrates, things like that. So maybe having some more legal challenges there for Prince Andrew and obviously the rest of the royal family as a result of this. So yes, that'll be an interesting one to see what happens with that. But again, this is about this whole idea of, we have taken for granted these people who are in power and in authority being untouchable, being above the law, and now is the time where we will see the shift in that, and that these people are fallible and human and make mistakes, but also do very bad things as well that they need to be punished for, and that they should be punished for and should not be allowed to get away with. And powerless young girls are now being able to have a voice and to be able to stand up for themselves and say, this is wrong, and I can have my justice with this. So yes, let's see what happens with that one. But it'd be interesting to see where the shift in Jupiter has an effect on, say, our general election. We've already got another week or so, and obviously the election, I think I mentioned before, falls on the full moon in Gemini, and both of our potential prime ministers have got the sun in Gemini. Very different sorts of Geminis, Mr Corbyn and Mr Johnson. but they are both of the Gemini persuasion in terms of their sun. So yes, let's look out this week for where the shifts are in terms of rhetoric and what people are saying, because the bluff and bluster and grand gestures of somebody like a Boris Johnson might favour the Jupiter in Sagittarius, but sort of the containment and the sort of steady away of somebody like Mr. Corbyn might actually benefit from this. And also Jeremy Corbyn has got Moon in Virgo as well, so he has that Earth on his side in this particular respect. But like I say, not holding out for any sort of predictions on these things just yet. We'll have to see. My heart is too much in this to be able to call it. So what other aspects have we got this week? Got two helpful ones today. I quite like both of these aspects, and we've got Mercury in Scorpio, which has now picked up quite a bit of speed and will continue to move very quickly during December, flying through 3 signs. So finishing off in its time in Scorpio, it's 6 weeks in Scorpio. So time to get ourselves out of the depths in terms of our thinking and psychoanalyzing ourselves, and back into the light with a bit of Mercury in Sagittarius in the next week or so. But excuse me, I'm just going to have a quick drink because I have a frog. So yes, Mercury in Scorpio sextile Pluto in Capricorn, and I like this. It is quite a serious aspect in some respects. Capricorn and Scorpio are both very serious signs. But it's this idea, again, of mentally making progress and change and transformation. So over the last 6 weeks, we have had the opportunity to go inside ourselves and to think about where we are with everything in terms of our mental processes and how we speak and how we communicate, and speaking from a position of truth, because I think Scorpio likes truth. It's very I think of it as being like the scalpel. It cuts through things, and people with Mercury in Scorpio are very can be very cutting, literally, and cut to the core of things, and can make you feel quite uncomfortable at times. But in saying that, there is always truth to what they speak, even if the words come out quite harsh sometimes. And I think that this kind of idea of truth seeking is particularly present when you've got this sextile to Pluto in Capricorn. And it's about, say, communicating your truth, the truth that comes from the depths, from way inside of yourself. So having very honest conversations with people and looking at where you can transform on a personal level, on a local level, on a national, global level, some of these ideas. So maybe talking about ways in which you can go forward for the future to be covering all these topics that we talked about. Is this idea of challenging the order, challenging authority, looking at where you can be more sustainable, where you can look to where you see yourself in the world, this changing world that we have around us. And that's what I think of when I think of this aspect. It's like having a deep conversation with someone about, well, we know that the world is changing. We know that, and it could be conversation about some of the things they say, like the story about Prince Andrew, maybe talking about something to do with that. But then in relation to maybe something that's happened to yourself, or, just the way in which you view the world and how this changes the way you view the world. Or it could be, say, stories like about the whale with all the plastics inside of it. How can we as a society change the way we behave and look at and have conversations about how we can do our own bit towards making things better. So that's how I see that one. And also today we've got a nice little sexy little aspect, which I particularly like, which is Venus in Capricorn, sextile Mars in Scorpio. So you've got the two attraction planets there of Venus and Mars working in quite a dynamic way with each other. And say, even though it's a Tuesday, it points to this idea about having some kind of a nice time together, kind of sexy time, romantic time together. Again, it's quite a sort of like deep way, but also in a kind of bare, raw, exciting, sexy kind of way as well. I think Capricorn and Scorpio are two very, very passionate, sexy signs. So people don't think of Capricorn necessarily as being like that, but they are. They can be very much so. They are of Earth. They know how to get in touch with that side of themselves. So, yeah, and it could be, showing your appreciation to somebody in that way. It could be about taking somebody out or buying them something that's, that is very much of a Capricorn style. So something that's luxurious, expensive, but of great quality. Something that shows your status. So maybe taking your beloved out for something nice to eat, but then leads on to something that is quite deep and passionate as well. So yeah, you could have some nice sexy time there for a Tuesday. Can't be bad. Nice work if you can get it, as they say. And then the other aspects that I've got for later in the week, which is Sunday, which is the one I mentioned about the Sun square Neptune. And that's about challenging ideals and beliefs very much. And it's about, again, to do with lies and deception. So again, it could be, say, to do with the business with Jeffrey Epstein and all of that, but it could equally the other person who's really known, well, a couple of people that are known very much for not telling the truth and getting caught out by it are Mr. Johnson and Mr. Trump. So it could be on a bigger scale to do with that, maybe something being revealed that's going to cause a bit of an upset in some way, and say it's about trying to pull the wool over people's eyes but then being caught out for it. So we have that aspect on Sunday coming up. On a personal level, it's about making sure that you don't get carried away with ideals and fantasy, and say it can be deception. It's about making sure that you tell the truth. Sun in Sagittarius likes to tell the truth, and it likes to be honest. If you could give any male Sagittarius a name, it would certainly be Frank. It's about that honesty, and Pisces is about the kind of illusion delusion kind of idea. So those two squaring up against each other, we have challenges there as to what the truth is, and not being deceived by people. So yes, could be some interesting stuff comes out of that. And the final aspect I've got as well is Venus sextile Neptune. So on a personal level, again, it gives this opportunity for kind of pleasant relations with your loved ones. And this is this to me reminds me of a very Christmassy vibe, because the whole idea of the Christmas spirit is very one that's very much fantasy and not quite real, but we love to believe in it. That kind of magic that comes from the Christmas period, and this Venus sextile Neptune very much feeds into that. And it's kind of because Venus in Capricorn is about tradition, and it's about you know, olden times and those kinds of things. So maybe, you know, you want to get that film out, that, you know, that film that reminds you of Christmas has gone by, getting your Christmas spirit back in, you know, get Elf on, get Love Actually on, something like that, that could then definitely bring out, you know, it could transform an old Scrooge. You know, Scrooge is very much a Capricorn character, you know, that's very avaricious and doesn't like spending his money, and, you know, with his bar humbug. So it could be the Muppets Christmas Carol you might want to go for there. And, you know, this idea that you can have this spirit of Christmas, and the ghosts as well, I think, you know, very much kind of the Neptunian delusion illusion kind of idea coming in to bring in the Christmas spirit. So I think that's a lovely way to end the week. So sorry, let me just put down my coffee. So yeah, let's see what happens over the next 12 months. You know, it's not going to be whiz bang exciting, but it could be say a great opportunity to build and to, you know, decide who you really are stripped back. And you know, I think that's quite a good thing to be in this world of Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn. We need to strip back. We need to get rid of the unnecessary and the fast and the, you know, the quick wins and all of that. We need to start thinking about, say, having a world that is sustainable, and to look at things that give us pleasure that aren't material, that to look at, you know, what we value, what we really value in terms of our friends and our planet and our society, and is it more than just what we consume? And I think, you know, say consumer society is very much this idea of you know, earthly pleasures, which we have got to move away from. So yes, so those are my thoughts for this week. Thank you for listening. See you soon. Bye.